And that's us live. Well, hi Ed. How's Somerset today?
Treated me very well this weekend. Been blessed with some good weather, so I've been painting sort of 20 fence panels this weekend. So
Oh dear,
much
dear.
fun. Yeah,
I am jealous.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. We've had it not too bad here, but with this new dog of mine, this morning he woke me up at 5 to 5, and by quarter
Okay.
past 5 we were out the house because I thought, why procrastinate? He's up.
Yeah.
I looked. We've got one of these blackout screen things, and I could
Yeah.
just faintly see that. Yeah, it's daylight. So I thought,
Yeah.
well, let's see if I can be the first one down to the rugby pitches. Guess what? I wasn't.
Oh wow. Okay.
There was another fella there with his two dogs before me, so that was awesome. Yeah, yeah.
It's a
We,
good
we,
early
we got
start.
yeah. Pete Dassey often messages me at 10 o'clock in the morning and 10:30 in the morning, and that's him getting up to go to work. He
Okay.
starts work at 5:30. I
Yeah.
don't know how that guy does it.
No,
But,
that's a long old day.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so really wanted to sort of as everybody else has been on, to give any sort of thoughts on the weekend, last weekend, and the Keep Talking to Their Walk-in event.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was
Thank you.
really interesting. Did you arrange all of that?
So we're one big community, but we were all I think, apart from Ripper, who inspired Ericose, and Tracy Strunsey, who had already got her sort of channel going. But yeah, we're all part of a big community, and for a lot of us, Ericose was the one that sort of started us off, or we sort of followed in his footsteps. Bizarrely, Ericose is a character from a Michael Moorcock novel, and Ericose is the eternal champion that reincarnates. He goes off and becomes another reincarnation and another one. So, the dude has reincarnated, but multiplied at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was just a case of getting a bit like yourself. You reach out to various people. I'd reached out to quite a few, and then said, I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity to people that had said yes previously, such as yourself. Well, here's the ideal event to showcase all these people. Yourself with your channel, Vic Fazell with his. The Luke Mitchell case, the Daniel Holtzclaw case. In fact, that's something I've always meant to ask you about that one. Your thoughts on that, but I might have to let you have a think about that one at some point in the future, because that was a case that Kathleen Zellner was involved with to begin with. But yeah, I mean, it was so easy to put it together because, as I say, we're just one big community, as you probably realise. All of the 12, 13 channels. We all host each other. We're all guests on each other's channels. It really was a pleasure putting it all together. It didn't really need much putting together. It was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and the array of speakers as well to attract, like the likes of Jerry, and that. And I thoroughly enjoyed meeting Tracy. I've seen her on Twitter, but that's the first time I met her. And yeah, I mean, the thing that grabs me, I've been part of the sort of Facebook groups for a little while.
Sure.
It's the amount of knowledge. And I remember Jerry Bupe, when I spoke to Jerry, he said this to me, that the social media communities have such a vast array of knowledge, and they know more about the case than perhaps he even did. And I see some of the discussions that people are having, and I just think I'm in awe of the way their brains think, the way that they can look at complex material and break it down for one another and stuff. It's really, really good. and hopefully some of it will be useful for Kathleen as well.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I had one occasion when I emailed Steve Drizzen about I it was doing the rounds on the within our community about an email that Ken Kratz had sent to, I think it was Tom Fallon, asking that him and Tom Fassbender be given seats next to one another so that they could attend not the en banc hearing, but the first Seventh Circuit hearing. And then later on, he says, I'm no longer involved in the case, but is it time to look at Brendan's sentence? And so I sent this email to Steve Drizzen, and I said, have you seen this? And he said, no, where'd you get this from? So I think sometimes we're sort of on top of things straight away, whereas, one person might miss what was going on. So, at times that there are people that have investigated hugely into these, certainly into Stephen Brendan's case. But that's one of the things that I did want to ask you about is, the theme of the event, keep talking till they're walking. Is it possible for advocacy to go too far and to sort of damage somebody's case if they're investigating it too deeply?
I mean, there's always a risk of prejudicing a trial in terms of we don't know the full facts of what the lawyers are the lawyers are looking into and what avenues they're chasing up. It is very difficult, I think, in terms of one of the not issues I have, but I think people need to be very mindful of naming suspects that they believe. Because that's where, especially in England and Wales, once you name a suspect, it's very difficult to kind of walk back from that. And regardless of what we think of these individuals, they're entitled to a fair trial. Yeah. And the only way that justice is going to be served is by having that fair trial. So I do think there needs to be, caution in terms of naming people with such sort of ferociousness almost.
Yes.
That would be the only thing that I think could impact a trial. And I guess if there is going to be a new trial, then perhaps things might hopefully quieten down, not in terms of silencing the community, but focusing on what's happening at the trial opposed to their own sort of investigations and things like that. Sure.
I mean, one of the things that I think I've always tried to do is, if there's been a sort of a suggestion that person A or person B is a suspect, I will present it from the point of view that this person is has been suggested as a suspect, rather than me sort of saying I think that this guy is really dodgy. But then I suppose when it comes to Bobby and Scott, Ryan Hilligus, Mike Holbach, and Scott Blowdorn, I'm afraid it's the documentary speaks for itself. I didn't find it biased at all. I found it just to present a very fair chronological.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's the right approach. But when I interviewed Kathleen, I thought it was really interesting that she about halfway through the interview, 3/4 of the way through, she told me, knowing this was going out, she told me, I know who's done it. And, we both chuckled about it. And I really wanted to push on, name them. But I knew she absolutely wouldn't, for these reasons that I'm talking about. So I was like, okay, well, we'll leave it there. But, I just think we need to be quite careful with that sort of thing. But yeah.
Yep. Yep. I mean, what was obviously interesting was just leading up to that was the Kathleen's motion, and then the state responded, accusing her of throwing spaghetti at the wall, and then she goes and completely bamboozles them by saying, you might be poor at investigating things, but I am incredibly thorough. And then I thought it was terribly patronizing of Kathleen Zellner to then, respond to the state's response that that her response should be struck because she didn't ask for permission to reply and all this kind of stuff. And and so she says, oh, please let me respond. And I thought, oh yes, that is really
I
really
mean,
rubbing their noses in.
I wasn't surprised by the first response by the state, sort of dismissing it out of hand. But I mean, if you have a credible eyewitness that Kathleen would have, and she, as she went on to explain, the vetting process, the fact checking, the state are stalling. Basically, I think they are stalling for time, trying to dismiss stuff. They know that this stuff isn't going to go away, so they need to get their deck in order to try to tackle this. And the best way to do that is to buy yourself time, as you kind of negotiate or discuss your next move, and that's what they're doing right now. And it's petty name calling and then things like that. She's not going to be sort of thrown off course by this. She knows her stuff. I don't think I've ever met a lawyer, and I've met many lawyers. Never met a lawyer I've been as impressed by in terms of her conviction of Stephen's innocence, and she's pulling through the ringer as well with all these tests and the BEOS test of brain fingerprinting. These things are rigorous. So
one of the things that I was thinking was that so far the Circuit Court and Judge Angela Sukovich has denied everything, and so I just wondered if in the long term Judge Angie isn't running the risk of with the benefit of hindsight, I should have been more cooperative with Kathleen Zellner, because it's just looking more and more embarrassing for her that on some of these major issues, like Wisconsin statute of evidence preservation being completely disregarded by a person that wrote it, and for her to not take any action on that, is there a danger that she's actually unwittingly in trying to help and protect people, or feeling that she's helping and protect people by acting as if she's some sort of district attorney, that it will inevitably bite back?
I mean, it could do. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but absolutely there is that risk if you're overstepping your boundary in terms, or your jurisdiction in terms of what your role is. If you've overstepped that, there will almost certainly be some sort of bite back here. But I think Kathleen's goal is to go to the higher courts as quickly as possible to get these lower courts out. But if there's new evidence that did not exist at the time, so the test for England and Wales about introducing new evidence to an appeal would be, it needs to be new, compelling, and wasn't available at the time. And the eyewitness testimony would fit all of those tiers here. I'm sure in Wisconsin that there's something similar in terms of that. So it is just a matter of time, but we are probably still thinking years rather than months.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed that there's been a certain amount of excitement as well, because when you look at footage taken on that Saturday, later on the Saturday when the RAV4 is found, there's an aerial shot where it clearly shows tire tracks going into the grass verge and coming back out again at exactly the point where Thomas Sawinski says.
Yeah,
I mean, that seems
pretty compelling so far.
Yeah, it is. So one of the things I sent you and asked you about, well, there was a couple of things, but I just want to very quickly, because you said, this doesn't really apply here in the UK, but something that's always bugged me is, in a trial, Ken Kratz can say sometimes the most ludicrous things. Then there's this, the other party objects, and the judge either says, sustained or overruled. And I just can't fathom out what sort of difference does all this make? Because the jury has already heard somebody say something. So I'm a bit confused as to, is it just procedural stuff, or does it have any lasting effect on the trial?
I mean, you're right. If you want to get something in that doesn't meet the evidential threshold, the admissibility threshold, you're going to get it in through the back door. And one of the backdoor ways is this, and then your opponent jumps out of the seat and says objection, and then the judge says sustained, and then we'll tell the jury to disregard that when making their deliberations. But as you say, the cat is out of the bag.
Exactly.
The ordinary person simply cannot. The majority of ordinary people who sit on a jury may struggle to put that out of their mind, even consciously or subconsciously. So it's we don't necessarily have the sort of theatrical objection here in England and Wales, but there are similar things in which the judge will then have to remind the lawyer of their conduct in terms of how they're conducting their case and presenting their evidence, and it would give the same warning again to the jury. But if there was a question of admissibility of evidence, what we would have over here is something called a voir dire, which is basically a trial within a trial. And what happens here is the jury in your case is discharged for a tiny bit of time. A new jury from the next courtroom is brought in, and they will discuss the admissibility. And the importance of that, and then they'll decide whether or not the evidence should be brought into your trial. Then your jury returns in. The importance of that is the idea that the jury do not hear inadmissible evidence. So, and that's why this stuff is so important, and it's so bad when the cat is out of the bag, because you have a separate mini hearing to deal with this very issue. It's an important part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, as I was telling you, I had the pleasure of meeting Jerry Buting and David Rudolph in Amsterdam. And I actually met Jerry as he was arriving at the theatre. And he said, because there were pieces of paper there where you can write your question on. He said, have you got a question for me, Oh yeah, there you go. Because I'd gone and written it. And so he took it away, and it was him and David. That was the first question they answered, and it was the one: who's the more unethical? Who's the worst prosecutor? Ken Kratz of Making a Murderer, or Jim Harding, the prosecutor in the Staircase? And you asked. Who won, as it were, And I said, well, they both gave a pretty good account of the terrible things that both Ken Kratz and Jim Harding done and said. But any thoughts yourself, having obviously followed both cases?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess it's trying to pick between two people who's going to punch you in the face. I mean, it's not going to end well. I mean, Kratz, for me, I think probably just edges it. That narrative, the desire for narrative control, to jump out in front of the media. This wasn't the norm. I thought was atrocious. I think it prejudiced the trial, and I have a real issue with that. Hardin and the desire to get the Germany stuff in and stuff like that. It's kind of relevant. It's not relevant. I mean, I've not seen the Staircase for a number of years, and there's a number of issues that I kind of do remember. But yeah, Harding was pretty bad. But for me, Kratz would edge it. Can I ask you a question, Paul?
Sure. Yeah.
What do you think of the resolution or the conclusion in the Staircase with the Alford plea? That I kind of half did it, or I'm not saying I did it, but it's bizarre.
It is, because in the very first episode of Staircase, David Rudolph says that in Scotland they have this verdict of not proven, and I've actually suggested on a few occasions that there are certain similarities between the not proven and the Alford plea. I mean, what was bizarre, of course, was that you want Mike Peterson to pursue justice. But as he says, he was getting to nearly 70 years old, and this could just drag on and drag on. I mean, how long did they keep that ankle bracelet on him?
Yeah.
That was some ridiculous amount of time. So and then he had to face the sister who was really vile, towards, well, not just Mike Peterson, but also to David Rudolph, wasn't she?
Yeah. She was.
I must admit that most people, I would say, are not big fans of the Alford plea. I would say, however, that there is definitely a body of people who, if Brendan was given that opportunity, would say, take it, and then wait for Stephen Avery to exonerate, for Kathleen Zellner to exonerate Steve, and then you can exonerate yourself after that. So, take an Alford plea. The problem with that would be that, supporters of Steve are then going to say, well, that's Brendan really not supporting Steve in this case. Whereby Brendan supporters would say, yeah, but it's not about Steve. Steve Drizzen and Laura Nyrider haven't got to concern themselves with Steve's case. They've got to concern themselves with, Brendan is their client.
Absolutely.
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is a tough one, and each lawyer has to do the best and give the best advice to their particular client that isn't necessarily centered on the bigger picture. It's what's best for their client. I don't actually, if there was, hypothetically, this Alford plea, I'm relatively certain I don't think Brendan would take it, even if it meant getting out now. But I just think it's a bizarre mechanism, in all honesty, that it satisfies nobody. You're not guilty, but you've spent time a great deal of time in prison. Find it bizarre. It was one of the questions I asked David, and that was basically his answer.
I actually had a conversation about both the Alford plea and the not proven verdict with a retired chief of police. And he'd never heard of the Alford plea. And when I told him about it, he was like, well, that's just crazy. And he also pointed out something else that was very interesting, and that was that for the person themselves that's not proven, life can still be very, very problematic, because there will still be people in the community where they live who will constantly point the finger and say, you were lucky you got off with that because you're guilty as hell. They're not proven. Although, obviously David Rudolph says, this is great that Scottish law has this not proven. As far as the chief of police was concerned, not the chief of police, sorry, of Scotland, but this retired police chief said, that from his point of view, he felt it wasn't a good verdict for the person that was found not proven. So looking at it from the defendant's point of view rather than the police point of view.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very, very fair of him. It's
definitely.
Now then, so I think we've touched on most of what I was going to ask you about. But I did want to know how the channel Criminal Justice Natters is doing. How's the subscribership? Is it building up?
Yeah, it is. We've had, over the last I looked at it this morning and been following it for a few days. We've reached 1,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Now it's about 1,100, which is very pleasing in the 5 months that we've been around. So that's really pleasing. The videos are generally doing really, really well. Kathleen's approaching 11,000. Jerry's approaching 5. So yeah, it's good. I'm just trying to work out. I've got to have a little bit of a break. Excuse me. I've got to have a little bit of a break for a little while. I've got one coming toward the end of this week, but then coursework and exams are coming in, so I've got to mark them. So it's going to eat into most of my days, and I've got some book deadlines that's rapidly approaching. So I'm probably going to have 3 to 4 weeks without one after Friday. So it's going well though. I'm really pleased, and it's good to see that. I started this basically because every book I write or article I write that gets published, I send it to my mum, and she's really proud. I hear all of that, and that's great. I know she doesn't read them, and I was thinking, well, how can I do and explain stuff I'm interested in that I do? It's going to be easy for you to digest. And I thought with the channel, and she watches it. So hi, Mum. So
That's
excellent.
It's good. You've prompted me to ask you a couple of things. Well, first of all, just a general observation. One of the reasons I started, or should I say the main reason I started my channel, was the fact that having had over a dozen lengthy conversations with the former Sheriff Robert Herman, I wanted to share that information of what the contents of the calls were about, and just putting it on a Facebook post. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is that that Facebook post might be news for about 10-15 minutes until the next Facebook post goes on top of it, and within hours, it's at the bottom of a huge list of, and I felt, that it's going to get lost. It's going to be like, as they say about, today's news is tomorrow's chip paper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I really wanted to do it from that point of view, because now you've got these videos that will stand the test of time, and people will keep coming back to them, well, as long as there's YouTube, they can access your chats with Kathleen Zellner, David Rudolph, and Jerry Buting. The other thing I noticed was that there was a couple of tweets, if I forgot this wrong, right, where you were inviting anybody that's written a book about any kind of wrongful conviction or legal situation. Was it specifically wrongful conviction to get in touch?
No, basically criminal justice based.
Criminal justice, right.
So as well as my job as a lecturer in law and running this, and being a dad to two, I also edit a book series for the publisher Routledge. So what we want to do is a relatively new series. It's about sort of just under a year old. There's about 7 books under contract. My last book was published in it. And I wanted to give up what I thought would be really good in terms of sort of marketing the books and bringing it to a wider audience, would be to sit down with the authors. So I've got a couple of academics lined up, some from a pair of academics from Cardiff and an academic from De Montfort University. And they're going to come on and talk about their research. Yeah, in Leicester,
Leicester, I was going to say Leicester.
They're going to come on and talk about their latest research, and it will just give another sort of cutting edge design to the channel and keep people abreast of what's going on in academic circles, and broaden, the idea of, academic research is accessible to everybody. It might be hidden behind paywalls, but if you are interested in a particular article and you can't access it, you only have to find the corresponding author, email them, and I would bet 9 out of 10 would be delighted to send you a PDF of their article, because it means someone's interested. So if you're interested in academic work, just contact them.
Excellent. Tomorrow, Monday, there's going to be a protest in Glasgow for Luke Mitchell, and there's going to be a Twitter event for that. And then Tuesday, apparently everybody's looking forward to Tuesday because it's Star Wars Day.
Yeah.
May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you. Yeah, indeed.
I got that from a P7 student earlier today, and I wondered, what on earth is he on about? May the 4th be with you. Brilliant. Yeah. So listen, I'm not going to keep you too much longer. It's great to have you back on, and hopefully, as things seem to be developing very nicely in this case, we're hoping, and I don't know if you've got a crystal ball there and you can tell us how long the Court of Appeals are going to take to decide whether to remand it or not. The sort of common theory is anywhere between 30 days and 3 months.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be the longer end of that time frame. I think they will use the whole time that's available to them by statute to answer. They're not going to rush any decisions.
Yeah.
And it will be really interesting in 3 months' time to see what they say.
Yeah. I mean, the latest request from Kathleen Zellner was a request to respond, but that was that sort of a retrospective, a request to respond to the state, or is it to do a further response? I don't know. I don't
I'm
know
not entirely sure.
Nah. So
I would imagine it's back to the states, to respond to what the state said, because because of the fun and games earlier.
Well, yeah, I mean, it certainly put a smile on all of Stephen Brendan's support. This is when finally we're getting the state are getting a bit of a slapping from Kathleen Zellner, and the whole idea that they they're going to try, or they even think that they're dealing with Kathleen Zellner, and they think they're dealing with somebody like Len Kaczynski, or some complete incompetent defense lawyer, and they, well, as you've just said, probably the most impressive attorney out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen couldn't wish for better representation in terms of someone that's going to advance his best interests. So well
excellent. Well, listen, enjoy the rest of the evening in sunny Somerset. And as I say, if maybe once, obviously you've got your academic year that needs to be concluded, and I appreciate that you're going to be quite busy with that. But maybe once we get the sort of Court of Appeals response, maybe if we could have a chat about it.
Absolutely. Once it's out there, would be more than happy to discuss it. Can I just say one thing before we go, Paul?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sure.
On my next show, I'm speaking to Dr. Jessica Taylor, and she on Friday. If you Google Victim Focus and Dr. Jessica Taylor, you will see you'll find her. And on Friday, she published the sort of largest study concerning violence against women, and in particular sexual assault. And some of the figures, the headline figures, are absolutely startling. So if anyone has an interest in this, I've done a couple of videos concerning allegations of rape and rape myths and everything else. I would definitely recommend reading this report. I think it's quite eye-opening, and it will be all over the media next week, I would imagine.
Sure. You wouldn't happen to have a link to that I could then put into the description of the video?
Yep. Do you want me to send you the link now?
Well, yes. If you send me the link, then once we finish, I'll just pop it into the description, and then people can go and have a look at it from there. That would be great.
Okay, I will dig that out for you right now. Access study. There we go. Where should I place it? Sorry, Paul. The private chat. There you go.
Oh, yeah, lovely.
Wonderful.
Got that.
Cool.
Perfect. Yes, I will. As I say, I will pop that into the description. Dr. Ed, it's great. Well, first of all, it's great that you started your YouTube channel just 5 months ago. Brilliant that you're up to over the 1,000 subscribers. It now means that you can go live.
Yes.
From even from a mobile phone, and I think you before that you're not able to go live, are you? You have to sort of pre-record something. It's just greater flexibility. So let's look forward to the Court of Appeals response, and we can have another chat. I'll say cheerio. Thanks again.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye for now.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Bye for now.